Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll give folks a few more minutes to trickle in before we start the presentation. So in the meantime, please enjoy the music. All right, welcome everyone, and welcome back to those who've joined us in our previous webinar. Thank you for all joining us in this webinar, AAPI Wellness, a plan for mental wellness, part 3, in a 3-part webinar series as part of our AAPI Strong initiative, spearheaded by National ACE. I would like to thank our webinar partner, Cal Voices and Stephanie Ramos, for working with us to put this together. Put this presentation together. I would also like to thank our program sponsors at the community level, PG&E, our supporting ally sponsor, East West Bank and PepsiCo Foundation, and our industry sponsor, National ACE. And now I would like to introduce you all to Stephanie Ramos, a dear friend of mine and the superstar of this webinar. Stephanie has worked in the mental health space for many years, and today she will take us through the different parts of the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, also known as WRAP. And now, without further ado, Stephanie.
Thank you, everyone. I am really excited to be here. Nikki, I'm having a hard time starting my PowerPoint. It just says that I might need you to stop so I can start. So there we go. Let's get rolling, everyone. And so like Nikki mentioned, we are in part 3 of this wonderful learning series that the CalAsian Foundation has worked with us to be able to provide. And so today we are here to talk about the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. Some of you may have been familiar with this in the past, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And then we're going to walk you through the various parts to creating your own plan. So a little bit about the series. The point of the series was to learn about fundamental principles of recovery, understanding trauma, and how to develop a wellness plan to achieve and maintain your personal wellness. One of the great things about wellness plans is that they are designed by you and for you as a tool for you to be able to keep yourself well. We know that sometimes we need support from others. We might need professional help at times, but it's really important to empower ourselves and to be able to create a plan that really reflects what's important to us and what types of supports are going to be most important to us when we are working to maintain our wellness. So in this particular part of the series, we're going to provide an overview of the Wellness Recovery Action Plan and how you can develop a personalized plan to achieve your wellness goals. So this is about you, your resources, your supports, and what's important to you. So as Nikki mentioned, my name is Stephanie Ramos. I'm the Education Director at Cal Voices. I actually worked in this field for about 18 years. I started as a youth advocate at the ripe old age of 19, working in county clinics, providing support to youth and teens as they were trying to navigate their own mental health and recovery. Personally, I have a sibling who's now 34 who has had severe mental health challenges since she was about 14 years old. And so this has not just been a professional journey for me, but also a very personal one. And recognizing that what works for one person might not work for somebody else. And so being able to personalize, your own plan, figure out what's important to you, what your goals are, is really, really important when it comes to maintaining your own wellness. So we just want to remind folks to respect each other and our contributions. Be open to learning. So we may talk about things that you're familiar with. We may talk about things that maybe you haven't thought about before. And we want to remind you to engage in self-care. So we're going to be talking, a little bit about triggers, a little bit about those early warning signs we might experience when we're starting to become unwell. And so if you've experienced that before, maybe you're experiencing some of that now, it could, bring up some feelings for yourself, or maybe you are supporting a loved one. And so we want to really encourage you to take care of yourself. If you need to step away for a moment, that's fine. And one of the things that we're going to start with is creating our wellness toolbox. And that's something where we're going to be able to identify what are those things that help us to feel good, right? And while we're here together, I want to encourage you to use that wellness toolbox once we get it started. So today we're going to talk about what is a wellness plan, like what does it actually mean? And then we're going to take you through the different parts of a wellness plan. So we'll start, like I mentioned, with the wellness toolbox. What are those things that help you to feel good? If you're starting to get stressed, what can you do to help you feel better? We'll talk about the daily maintenance plan. What do I look like when I'm well? What do I need to do every day to stay well? We'll also identify triggers. Right? What are those things that trigger you, that get you in that bad mood? Maybe they maybe trigger symptoms of starting to have some mental health challenges. And we're also going to talk about what do you do when that happens? We'll identify early warning signs and what does it look like when things are starting to break down for us? And then lastly, we'll finish off with the crisis plan. The crisis plan we'll just review. We won't actually talk about, what would you put in your plan, only because a crisis plan can take a very long time to develop. It takes a lot of thought. Sometimes it takes experience being in a crisis to figure out what we want in our crisis plan, but we're going to go over those parts to make sure that you have an idea of what should be included. So if you were in one of the previous workshops, we talked about recovery. We actually talked about it in the first webinar of the series. We also briefly touched on it in the second webinar. And when we talked about recovery, we recognized that there are 10 guiding principles of recovery. And I bring this up because a wellness plan actually incorporates a lot of these principles. So it incorporates hope. If we're creating a wellness plan, we're actually hopeful, right? That we can manage our challenges, that we can manage ourselves when we start to have those symptoms, that we can maintain a life in wellness and recovery. It's person-driven. So this is a plan that you design for yourself. It's personalized and you're in the driver's seat. When we talk about recovery, we recognize that there are many pathways to recovery. So as you're creating your wellness plan, you're choosing what pathways work for you. What resources do you want to utilize? What support do you utilize in your own recovery? Recovery is also holistic. So it includes different parts of ourselves, different parts of our life. It includes, our spirituality. It includes our friendships and relationships. It includes purpose within our lives, right? So holistic can incorporate a lot of different things that you can also incorporate into your wellness plan. It can include peer support and relationships. And so we know that when, we are trying to maintain our wellness, or even if we're just trying to stay mentally healthy, we have relationships, we have support, we have friends, we have family. And so those people are often important in managing health. If we're having a bad day, who do we reach out to? Recovery also addresses culture. Right. And so if there are specific cultural practices that are very important to you, we want to make sure that we are incorporating those into your wellness plan. Recovery addresses trauma. So we're going to be talking about triggers, early warning signs, and those things may be as a result of trauma. There may be something that you experience that triggers previous trauma that you've experienced. And so we want to have a plan for that. It takes strength and responsibility to recover. And part of you being here and developing a wellness plan shows that you are taking responsibility for your own recovery. And it also incorporates respect, right? And so part of creating a wellness plan is that we are identifying what is important to us. And if we're comfortable, we want to share that wellness plan with the people that are our supporters so that they can respect what it is that we want when we're becoming unwell. And if unfortunately we get to that crisis plan, we get to the point where we're in a crisis, our supporters have that plan and they can honor what we put in there as they're supporting us through that crisis and onto recovery. So what is a wellness plan? Well, there are different types of wellness plans. The one that we're going to focus on today is the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And this is a personalized wellness and recovery system born out of and rooted in the principles of self-determination. It is a wellness and recovery approach, and it really helps people to decrease and prevent intrusive or troubling feelings and behaviors. It increases personal empowerment. So you are taking control over your own recovery. You're taking control over your wellness. It helps to improve quality of life, and it helps people to achieve their own life goals and their own dreams. So working with WRAP can help an individual to monitor uncomfortable and distressing feelings and behaviors through a planned response in order to reduce, modify, or eliminate those feelings. And a WRAP also includes plans for how do we want other people in our lives to respond when we can't make a decision, right? When we can't take care of ourselves, if we can't keep ourselves safe, what do we want other people to do, right? And so we're taking personal responsibility when we are trying to set that plan up front, right? When we're well, we're trying to say, hey, this is what I want, my care to look like if I'm not doing well. And in physical health, we often think of that as an advance directive, right? If I'm not able to make medical decisions for myself, what do I want to have done? And so when we're talking about WRAP, it's somewhat like mental health, right? Advanced directive. What do we want to have happen if we're in a place where someone else needs to make decisions for us? So wellness plans are for individuals who are living in recovery and want to maintain it. It helps to build structure, routine, and healthy habits. It helps address symptoms and triggers that someone may experience. It helps us identify tools, resources, and supports that can help us if we start to get triggered, if we start to experience symptoms, and it helps us prevent and manage setbacks. So we're not waiting for the trigger to happen, right? We're not waiting for a symptom to happen. We are creating a plan up front. So when those things happen, we have a plan. We know what we're going to do. It focuses on personal strengths, empowerment, self-direction, and responsibility. And it can be used for individuals. It can be used for partners, spouses, people in relationships. It can be used for families, and it can even be used for teams. So today we're really going to focus on the use for individuals. So if I'm experiencing symptoms, early warning signs, sometimes people will use this for their family. How do they know as a family if we're doing well, if we're communicating well, if we're having healthy relationships? What are triggers that happen within our family that start to create conflict, right, or discomfort amongst each other? So wellness plans can be used for different reasons, different purposes. And so once you get through today, you may think of creative ways to use wellness plans outside of just personal wellness, but personal wellness is what we're going to focus on today. So I also want to mention that, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan is really kind of set in kind of Western approaches. So it wasn't originally developed to be the most culturally responsive tool. And so years ago, our agency was working with another organization that specifically was serving the AAPI community. And as they were utilizing the Wellness and Recovery Action Plan, they recognized, not everybody in our community uses written language. Not everybody in our community is going to be able to write down a list of all of these things. Not everyone in our community is going to, say, I'm feeling depressed. And so they really work to modify the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And so one of the things, important things to think about as we go through this plan is, how would I want to develop my plan? So traditionally, we would tell people, pull out some sheets of paper and grab your pen. So if you're comfortable doing that, I invite you to do that today. Pull out a piece of paper, grab your pen. I like to say we're going to do some speed dating with wellness planning and help you start to create your wellness plan. If you're going to be supporting other people, or if taking that approach doesn't work for you, we encourage people pull out magazines, pull out photos of things or people that are important to you, use emojis, also utilize friends, families, or supporters. And so what we've seen is where, traditionally somebody may pull out, a few sheets of paper, write out what their plan is, what their triggers are. We also have opportunities where someone pulls out a piece of paper and a bunch of magazines and cuts out pictures of what that trigger would look like, of what their wellness tool would be. Or they pull out photos of their family members when they're thinking about what is a wellness tool, right? A wellness tool for me may be spending time with my grandchildren. It may be cooking, right? So being able to pull out photos, magazine clippings, thinking of different ways that we can help people create a plan if, writing those things down isn't the most appropriate way for them to create that plan. And also utilizing friends, families, or supporters can be important, especially if we're developing our crisis plan. So if we're supporting somebody who maybe isn't going to be writing down like what types of supports they want or services, maybe we support them as a friend or family member, and we're writing those things down in a crisis plan, so that if somebody was needed to utilize that crisis plan later, it is written out for the supporter. So just trying to be creative about what your plan actually looks like is going to really be based off of the best way that you communicate, process information, or what that's going to look like in folks that you might be supporting. So creating a wellness plan. So there's different elements of it. So first, I briefly went over this. The wellness toolbox was what we'll start with. We'll go into the daily maintenance plan. We'll identify triggers. We all have some of those. We'll talk about early warning signs when things are breaking down or getting worse. And we'll also jump into the crisis plan. So let's start with the wellness toolbox. If you have a piece of paper out, I encourage you to write some things down. But in the wellness toolbox, we want to identify and list all of the things that you use to help yourself feel better when you're having a hard time. All the things you use when you feel better, right? So maybe you decide I need to eat a little bit better, or I need to go on a walk. Some people may choose to do some journaling or reach out to a friend and talk on the phone. So there's a lot of different things that we use to feel better. So it's not always like, oh, I'm having such a hard time, I can only use this thing. So I want you to think about, if you are in a situation where you're having a hard time and you need something to help you feel better, what are some things that you must do? What do you have to do, right? Some people might say, I need to drink some water. I need to step away from the situation. I need to reach out to a friend. What are those things you must do? What are some things that you choose to do? You don't have to do them, but you would choose to do them. It might be a good idea for me to do these things. And what are some things you would like to try? Right? We often have some ideas of like, oh, if I wasn't feeling the best, I probably would like to go, walk down to the river. Something I might choose to do, maybe I don't have to do in that moment, is take my dog on a walk. Something I may choose to do is hang out with my grandkids. So take a moment and think about, for yourself, what are some of those things that you use to help yourself feel better when you're having a hard time? I want to give you some image examples. So let's say writing down a list might not be it, right? Maybe that's not how you want to express yourself in your wellness plan. We'll take some images, cut out something from a magazine, take some pictures from your family and put them in your wellness toolbox. So maybe somebody enjoys gardening as one of their wellness tools, right? So they can pull a clipping out of a magazine. They can take a picture of their yard. Maybe cooking is something that folks use as a wellness tool, or spending time with their family. So these are just some image examples. I won't be using image examples through the whole presentation, but I just wanted to show you there's other ways to kind of create your plan. It doesn't always have to be necessarily written down. So I wanted to open it up and see if anybody in the chat wanted to share some things that you use to help yourself feel better when you're having a hard time. So thinking about things that you must do that you choose to do, or things you would like to try. Irene said dog cuddles. Yes, dog lover over here. Absolutely. Other folks, what are some things that you do to feel better? Gym, play sports. Yes, Patrick. I know for a lot of people, if they get a lot of anxiety, it's good to like get it out, right? Janice said must-dos are drink water. Yes, yes. Choose to do, walk or journal, and like to try a dance class. I love all those. Nikki said take some time, relax, self-care, reflect. Absolutely. Those are all great ideas. And so the wellness toolbox, I like to say, is like fun, because those are things that they might be really easy to do. They might be things that we naturally think of. And a lot of you actually mentioned some things that are free, right? Drinking water, going on a walk. Also think of things that are free. free 99. Because depending on our situation, maybe we have a particular thing that we enjoy doing, but there's a cost to it, right? A massage would be a great thing that I'd like to do to help myself feel better, but maybe there's a point in time where, I don't have that $100 to go get a massage. And so identifying things that are free, thinking of those things you must do, that you choose to do, and things that you would like to try. Other things with wellness tools that you might want to think about as well is, what are things that I can do if I'm not home and I don't have my dog and I'm not doing so well, right? I heard somebody on there had said, drink some water, right? Maybe I can do that anywhere. So think of things that you can do if you have resources, you can do in certain settings, and other wellness tools that you can utilize if you're out and about and might not have access to those favorite things that you would want to do to help yourself feel better. I know Janice shared some cities have yoga in the park programs where you can attend community yoga classes for free. That is an awesome opportunity out there. So I encourage folks to check that out. So the next piece of the Wellness Recovery Action Plan is a daily maintenance plan. And so there's a few pieces to the daily maintenance plan. And so again, if you have a piece of paper out, I encourage you to take some notes around this. The first part of the daily maintenance plan is, what do you look like when you're feeling all right? What do you look like? If you can't remember, think about how you would like to feel. So you want to make a list of some adjectives and some descriptors. So when I'm feeling all right, I'm typically happy, right? I'm energetic, I'm positive, I'm friendly, maybe I'm talkative. For some people, it might even be my hair is done, right? My makeup is done. It might be that I'm dressed well. So think about, what do you look like when you feel well? What do you look like when you're all right? Some people might be like, well, why am I making a list of that? Because sometimes, when we're in a place when we're not well, we don't recognize it right away. But if we know what we look like when we're well, and we're looking at ourselves, we're thinking about, how we're doing in the moment, we have something to compare it to. Maybe I can recognize, I'm not really being as social as usual. I'm isolating a little bit. I haven't been in a happy mood for a little while. So you want to think about, what are those things that can describe you when you're feeling all right. So I want to invite some folks to let us know, what are some words that describe you when you're feeling good? And again, if you can't remember, think about how you would like to feel. What are some of those words that you would use? Oh, Grace said grateful. That could be a good one. Irene said rested. Absolutely. Grace, light or at peace? Those are all great examples. Other folks, how would you describe yourself when you're feeling all right? You're in a good mood. You're doing well. Peaceful. So generally we generally have a good idea of what we're like when we're well, or at least how we want to feel, right? What do we want to look like when we're in a good place? Nikki said loved, absolutely. Other examples could be happy, open, positive, motivated, talkative, right? Maybe you're joking around a little bit. So just kind of keeping those things in mind, right? What do I look like when I'm in a good place, when I'm doing well? So the second piece of the daily maintenance plan is dreams and goals. So if you have that piece of paper, pull it out. Think about goals you could work towards. And they can be anything, right? They can be far-fetched, they could be realistic. You can incorporate small steps to achieve them in your plan. But think about, when you're in a good place, what are your dreams? What are your goals? What are your ambitions? What are you looking forward to? And think about, those things, because when we're in a good place, when we're feeling well, we might be more optimistic, right? Thinking about where are we going, taking small steps in our lives to progress. So I know that's like a big question, but are there any goals you're working towards right now? Things that you have on your mind? Betty said a strength-based frame of mind. Oh, that's a goal for sure, right? But again, they could be anything. They could be far-fetched. They could be realistic. I know a goal I'm constantly working on is eating better food. It can be hard sometimes. Angelina said furthering our self-care. Absolutely. Janice, meal prepping. Yes, I got to work on that one. Irene said more me time. Right? A lot of these goals are great, and they're things that sometimes we might not need a tangible item to achieve those goals, right? They just might be things that with time we can take some space to work on those. So the next piece of the daily maintenance plan is thinking about what are things I need to do every day to maintain my wellness. And you can use your wellness toolbox for ideas. Remember, we talked about the things that we do daily to stay or things that we do to stay well, to get us, keeping us in a good place. Maybe cuddles with my dog is one of those things I need to do every day to maintain my wellness. So if you, and this can be really important, because if you start to feel like out of sorts, like you're just starting to not do well, you can go back to your daily maintenance list. Your day, is there something that I'm not doing that I should be doing every day to maintain my wellness? Am I eating breakfast? Am I feeding the dog every day? Am I getting the kids up and making sure they're getting to school, that their lunches are ready? Am I going to work every day if that's something I need to be doing every day? Am I staying hydrated, right? Am I taking a walk? What are those things for you personally that you need to do every day, right? To kind of keep yourselves in good spirit, to keep yourself healthy. What are those things? For some people, the daily list can be really important for a few reasons. One I mentioned is that, if we're starting to feel unwell, we can go back to that list and say, hey, what am I missing? There's something I need to be doing, and maybe I haven't been doing it. Another thing with the daily list that is important, that is, if we're in a place where we're really struggling, sometimes our daily list almost needs to be like a schedule for us, right? I need to, my daily list, I got to check it off, right? I got to get up maybe at a certain time. I need to take a shower. Maybe I need to brush, maybe I don't need to take a shower. I need to brush my teeth, right? I need to make sure that I'm eating at least, 2 meals a day. So the daily maintenance plan for the daily list can be something to reference. Am I doing all the things I need to do to stay well? It can also be your daily schedule. So for my sibling, at times she really does struggle with her mental health, and that can interfere with her ability to be organized, to have a structured day, to ensure that she's doing all the things that she needs to do, right? Did she remember to take her medications? And so, the list can be very important. It can be kind of important depending where you are that particular day, or if you're really struggling. And so, people use it differently, but it can, like I said, it could just be kind of like a list that you look at here and there. It could also be something that creates structure in your day and ensures that you're doing all of those things. So thinking about that, what are some things that you need to do every day to maintain your wellness? Some examples are, eating breakfast, feeding the dog, taking the kids to school, drinking water. Oh, we got some stuff coming in. Let's see. Janice said stretching. Oh, yes, absolutely. Right. Especially as we get older, if we're not doing that stretching, it definitely can impair our mobility. Amy said walking my dog, right? And thinking about things I have to do when I stay well could also be, is there a consequence if I don't do this particular thing every day, right? So maybe I have a very active dog, and if I don't take him on a walk, some things in my house will be tore up, and that'll cause additional stress in my life, right? So you might want to think that direction as well. Angelina said, eat so that I have the energy to do productive things. Morning coffee. Absolutely. That is on my have to, must do, absolutely have to do every single day list. Tyler said, go outside and get at least 15 minutes of sunlight. That's probably what I need to be doing and putting on my daily maintenance list as well. And so everybody's list is going to look a little bit different. And so, if you are supporting someone else, some of these things are easy ways to be supportive to people without saying, we need to create this plan, right? Maybe we help someone create a list of, hey, what are some things that help you feel good all the time? Let's make a list of those together, right? Or if someone's struggling, like, hey, let's make a list of things you need to do every day, and let's just focus on that, right? You're stressed out right now. Let's just focus on the things you have to do, and the other things we can deal with later, right? Because sometimes there's a lot of pressure when we think about all the things on our schedule, all the things going on, and sometimes we have to simplify it to those must-dos. What are those things I have to do? Because sometimes that's all we can do. So to continue with the daily maintenance list, there may be other things that we need to do, but we don't need to do them every day, right? So as part of your daily maintenance list, you might want to create another section in there that is a reminder list, right? Here are some things that I need to do occasionally. They're important. I need to make sure that I'm getting them done, but maybe I don't need to do them every day, right? Maybe I need to see the doctor here and there, especially if I'm managing a health condition. Laundry, right? I don't need to do it every day, but maybe once a week, I need to make sure that I get a load in, because if I don't, it's going to create additional stress for myself when I, got to get the kids going, when I have to get to work, things like that. Buying groceries, right? Maybe I don't need to do it every day, but, I know once a week and a half goes by, I have to make sure I get to that grocery store. Refilling medications, right? That might not be an everyday thing that I have to do, but I need it to be on my reminder list. So our reminder list are those things we don't have to do daily, but if we don't do them at some point, right, there could be additional stress or consequences that we might be dealing with. So, when some people are really stressed, they might not be going to the mailbox every day, but maybe they need to really make sure they're hitting that mailbox at least once a week, because we don't want to also worry about past due bills or, other things that may be going on. So, what are some occasional but important tasks that you need to do to stay well? We encourage folks to check that list every day, just to be like, I haven't done that in a week. Maybe I need to get on it. But what are some of those things? So we talked about the things that you have to do every day. What are some reminder things, some things that you may choose to do? And I also want to recognize this could look different for different people. So some of you may have something on your I have to do this every day, and that same thing might be on someone else's reminder occasionally I need to do it list. So it is going to look different, and that's the beauty of having a personalized wellness plan. So what are some of those things that you would choose to do? A reminder, occasional, but not every day. Irene said weekly, positive things from the week. Ooh, I like that, right? What's been going well? Gray said journal at least a few times a week. Right, and these things could be where like our daily maintenance list, we know we have to do it every day. And if we're starting to not feel well, and maybe we're doing our daily maintenance lists, let's check on, these reminder things. What are these occasional things that might, kind of help us get out of a funk if we're starting to not feel so well. Janice said tidying up the house. My favorite. Yeah, that can be one of those things where we don't want to do it every day, but we might want to get to it, right? Because not doing it can create additional stress. If we realize we're going to have to spend a few days cleaning after maybe we spent too much time not tidying up. So we talked about wellness, our wellness toolbox, right? Things that help us to feel good if we're having a hard time. We talked about things we need to be doing every day to stay well. We talked about things that we might choose to do, right? We also talked a little bit about what do I look like when I'm in a good place, right? When I'm well. And so we talked about wellness recovery action plan. We talked about wellness, right? Talking a little bit about recovery, but we need to talk about action, right? And so part of taking action in our recovery is being able to identify triggers, right? Things that if they occur might increase our symptoms, might get us really in a bad mood, right? Like kind of flip our day upside down. They may have triggered or increased symptoms if you've had them in the past. And so you want to think about what are those triggers in your life. So for me, I don't have a diagnosed mental health condition. So when it talks about, what, is increasing your symptoms, I might not necessarily have mental health symptoms, but I know that I have symptoms of not having the best day, right? Maybe I'm having headaches. I'm having a stomach ache. I feel really tense. I'm feeling a little anxious. Maybe I'm snapping at people. So I want to figure out what are those things that trigger that response from me? What gets me in those moods in that space? And so triggers can look different for different people. It's important to recognize what triggers one person might not bother another person at all. And so here are some examples of those. An anniversary of a loss or a trauma, right? So my significant other, the month of February is a difficult, it's just that period, because that was the anniversary of when his mom passed away. And so that I know is a hard month for him. He knows that. He knows when February comes around that that's a difficult time. So he identifies that as one of his triggers, right? He knows it's coming, it's foreseeable. Other types of triggers, just some examples, are isolation. Some people get really triggered when there's yelling around them or somebody yells at them. Bullying, loud noises, right? So thinking about, 4th of July is coming up. There's got to be a lot of fireworks. My dad is a Vietnam veteran. The loud noises and 4th of July can sometimes be a little triggering for him, right? He's hearing a lot of booms, a lot of illegal fireworks that are going on. So recognize that could be a trigger specifically for him. Watching the news can be a trigger. I know for me, myself, having a small child and, we have mass shootings that are going on. If I watch the news and something happens out of school, I am very triggered. You might find me crying somewhere. And so it is, some triggers we know, and sometimes we don't realize it's a trigger till it happens, but those things that just get us in that very uncomfortable, sometimes distressing place, we know are triggers, right? We've heard some people say being around my ex is a trigger. The smell of gasoline, dog parks, merry-go-rounds for some people, right? Depending on, have we had past trauma? Are there certain things that remind us of certain people or experiences that we've had? For some people, a scary movie could be a trigger. Bad drivers, anybody? And I'm sure all of you have some of your own triggers that you've experienced as well. And so the nice thing is that, when we start to think about it, we can point out like, oh yeah, definitely, I have some triggers and we can point those out. So we want to write them down. What are those, right? And because the ones that we think of right away, they're foreseeable. We know that they might happen. In some cases, like anniversaries, we know when they're gonna happen. And so we want to identify those. And for each of them, we want to create an action plan. So especially for those triggers that we know when they're coming, or we know they are going to occur at some point, we want to identify what we're going to do to comfort ourselves and keep our reactions becoming more serious if that trigger comes up, right? So what if we're already not in the best mood and then we get triggered, right? And so we blow up, right? But how do we think about, what can I do when those triggers happen so that it doesn't wreck my day? So I'm not in a terrible mood. So February isn't the worst month of my whole year. And so these can be tools that have worked for you in the past. Or if you look back, we started to create our wellness toolbox at the beginning. What were those things that help us feel good, right? If we're starting to have a hard time. And so, you want to think about what do you need if that trigger happens? I know for myself, like watching the news, if there's anything going on within schools that's dangerous, I need to reach out to a friend, right? That's something that's in my action plan. Like I need to reach out to a friend. I just need to be able to talk through what I'm experiencing or thinking in that moment. If there's a lot of tension in my workplace at all, or anybody yells, or there's a lot of negativity, I need to go on a walk. Like I need to express that energy physically, and that can help me feel better. So when you're thinking about your trigger, you want to have an action plan for each specific trigger, right? And maybe you just pick your top 2 or 3 that these impact me the most, or these happen most often. What's your plan? Because sometimes when we get triggered, we're in that state of discomfort, it's hard to think about in that moment, what do I do, right? And so if you plan ahead and something happens, or it's coming, you could be like, oh, this is a trigger. These are the things that I know that I can try. These are the things that I know that I can do right now. And in some cases they'll help. And at least maybe the issue doesn't go away, but your reaction, you can help it not become so serious or negatively impact you in such a way. And in some cases you might find out, that plan didn't work. I need to come up with some additional action steps for that particular trigger. So I'll throw it out there. If anyone's comfortable sharing, what are some of your triggers? What are some things that that kind of get you thrown off balance, are potentially upsetting, may get you kind of, maybe in a place where you're not feeling so great? Tyler said sometimes being around too many people. Oh my gosh, I can relate right now. I can really relate to that, right? That can be a trigger. And so if we're around too many people, we have to figure out what are we going to do in that circumstance. My stepson has a little bit of social anxiety, right? So that can be difficult. Grace said, seeing someone who caused me pain in the past, especially if I don't expect to see them, that can definitely be a trigger. Other folks, change in routine. Angelina, that's a great point. Routine is actually very, very important for our wellness in a lot of ways. And some people really, that routine helps them stay well, helps them stay focused. It's consistent. We know what to expect. And when that routine gets thrown off, it definitely can be a trigger for some folks. My husband at home, for sure. Any change to routine is a big trigger. So keep them coming in. The nice thing about sharing some of these things, like the triggers, early warning signs, is you start to recognize that other people might have similar things, right? Some of you might relate to being around too many people, running into somebody who's hurt you in the past, right? When we think about it, it's like, oh, wait, that would trigger me too. And so the same with, well, how do we respond, right? How do we respond to those triggers? So Are there any things that you've done or you found helpful that you can do to comfort yourself when you get triggered, to keep your reaction from getting worse, to keep yourself from experiencing symptoms, whether it be a lot of anxiety or you're getting a headache from it, or, you know, other types of symptoms that maybe it's having a bigger impact on you? What are some things that you've done? And you can think about things you put in your wellness toolbox a little while ago, or other strategies you found helpful in the past. Janice said, grounding myself. Ask myself what's reality versus in my head, or what can and can't be controlled. That is great, right? Sometimes even that self-talk of like kind of talking yourself through this can be really, really helpful. Angelina said, having faith, trusting self into calmness, right? Get through this. Other things folks have been able to do when they get triggered. Tyler said, going out for a quick walk and listening to music. Yes. Irene said, I've been rear-ended a couple times in traffic changes, sudden stops or slowing are triggers, and having music on helps my anxiety. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I hear from a lot of people that driving in general, right? Certain situations out on the road can be definitely triggers for people, especially if you've had a bad experience in the past. Anything else folks would like to share? Things that have been helpful? And, you know, I want to encourage folks to share, because you might think, oh, well, what I do isn't that great or special, but it might be really helpful to someone else who's on here with us today. So usually the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, what we're doing today is done in a group, and it's usually over the course of 8 sessions. So folks actually spend about 16 hours on this. So that's why I said we're speed dating with wellness planning. And one of the great things about doing it in a group and even spread out over time is that you have opportunities to learn from other people. Learn that you're not alone in feeling that trigger and having that symptom and having that early warning sign. And you're also able to kind of swap, action plans, like learning how other people are dealing with these challenges, and being able to adopt some of the tools that other people are using. So I really appreciate everyone that is sharing so far. I think it definitely helps to support other people and recognizing maybe what they're experiencing or dealing with isn't so abnormal. Some of these things are very common, and hopefully learn from each other and how we're addressing them. So the next part of the Wellness Recovery Action Plan is early warning signs. And so, we've been triggered, right? And so those are things that often happen, like something happens outside externally and it triggers us, right? So stopping really quickly in traffic, running into somebody that we didn't anticipate running into, having an anniversary of a loss or a tragic event, being in a crowd of people, right? These are often external things that impact us. Early warning signs are usually internal, right? Or they're not coming from the outside, they're within us, right? And so early warning signs might be, I've been having a headache for the last week, and I'm hydrated, I don't know what it is. And so I know for me, that could be stress, right? For some people, early warning signs could be a lack of appetite, right? I'm really not that hungry, I'm just not feeling the best. Early warning signs for some people are, I'm not sleeping well, I'm having challenges, or I'm being very short with people, right? And maybe being a little snappy with folks. And so early warning signs, again, can look different for different people. What could be an early warning sign for one person could be almost a crisis for somebody else, right? Depending on our own situation. So these are little subtle signs of change that indicate you need to take further action, right? So our first section was, okay, we've been triggered, this is going on, I need to do something. Because we don't want, our reaction to be so large or impact us negatively. But early warning signs is telling us, hey, something's going on. And so you want to think about, what are some of your early warning signs? Something that you've noticed in the past. How did you feel? How did you feel when you know you're not feeling quite right? Like something's off, right? Could be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. How do you know what is going on when you're not feeling quite right? How are you feeling? Or how did you feel just before you had a really hard time in the past, or when you noticed your habits or routines are changing, right? What are those? Janice had mentioned in the chat, this is a gentle reminder that it's okay to take a step back or a quick break from the webinar if some things we're talking about are triggering. Yes, yes. So, definitely looking at your wellness toolbox, right? What were some of those things that help us to stay well, right? Some folks might say taking a break can be a wellness tool, taking a walk, having a sip of water, listening to some music. So even as we're going through this workshop, right, something might be triggering. And so taking that into consideration as well. Thank you, Janice. Betty said, an early warning sign could be awareness of my short temper, feeling crankier, right? Just noticing those little differences in ourselves. Irene said, lack of motivation or energy. Absolutely, right? Those can be. Tyler, only being able to eat small portions of food. Definitely, right? And again, these are going to look different in different people. These are just the early signs. Something may be going on for us. Maybe I'm having a harder time getting up in the morning, right? Or maybe I'm forgetting things. I keep losing my keys. I keep losing a lot of stuff, having a hard time keeping track of things. And so sometimes, like, the nice thing about this WRAP plan, Wellness Recovery Action Plan, is that most of the plan you can create when you're feeling great or you're not feeling so great. The only part that we want to make sure folks are really well when they create it is the crisis plan. So this plan is, we like to say, a living document, and that you can constantly be adding to your plan, changing your plan, taking things out. And sometimes, when we're in a good place, it's hard to identify, well, what were those early warning signs? It was a while ago, or I didn't remember. And so, if you notice at any point in the future, you're starting to have some type of early warning sign, you're really starting to be impacted, write that down. How did I feel? How did I feel when I knew I wasn't feeling quite right? How did I feel just before I had a really hard time and I noticed my habits started to change, my routine started to change, right? Did I stop journaling a few times a week? Did I stop taking my daily walk? Did I, stop spending as much time with my dog as I used to? Am I dreading going on that dog walk that I'm usually really excited about? And so really kind of thinking about our behaviors and what little clues are we getting along the way. And so with the early warning sign, just like with the triggers, we want to create an action plan, right? So if I'm starting to have early warning signs, you want to make a list of actions that you can take if you notice you're experiencing them. What can you do? And so we might refer to that wellness toolbox at the beginning, right? It's like, okay, well, or my daily maintenance plan. You know what? I need to start getting up and going on a walk every day. I need to make sure I'm eating, a good healthy meal so I'm having energy to get through the day. I need to be snuggling with my dog, right? What are those things that I need to do to help myself address the early warning signs so that they don't get worse, right? So we had our trigger, which could be in a moment, and maybe it lasted a little bit. If we're starting to get those early warning signs, this is another step in the process where we can say, hey, I need to take charge and I need to do something because I don't want this early warning sign to get to the point where things are starting to break down for me. So some of the things in this list might be the same as items that you had in your trigger action plan, right? That we just did a little while ago. And so, again, this is something, it's a living document. It's something that you can change, add to, borrow ideas from other people. So I'm just curious if anybody has any additional warning signs you want to share, or what have you done in the past that helps keep your reactions or symptoms from getting worse, right? So you're noticing something early is going on. How do you address those? And, when it comes to early warning signs, some people's action plan is, I'm going to reach out to my doctor. I'm going to go to a support group. I'm going to go, connect with, a spiritual healer. It really is going to depend on you and what is important to you, what has worked for you. But this is a place where, hey, we got to do something, right? Tyler shared, talking to family when I noticed early warning signs has been super helpful. And, sometimes when if we have supportive people around us, it may be your family, it may be your friends, it may be other people. Sometimes it's good for them to know, oh, you're struggling right now. Like, maybe we support people in talking through it. Maybe I'm going to be a little more patient with somebody because I realize, hey, you know what, they're going through it a little bit. I can be a little more patient or kinder. Maybe as a supporter, I'm going to check in with someone a little more often because they shared with me they're having some early warning signs. And so, reaching out, talking to people if you have a supportive environment or individual in your life can be really helpful. Any other thoughts on this one? Early warning signs. Janice shared a warning sign, overreacting to small things. An action plan, go for a walk or just tell myself that I'm overthinking. It somehow stops the thoughts. Yeah, I found self-talk to be really helpful. Almost doing that, like, check-in with myself. Sometimes asking myself, is it really that serious? Is my response in comparison aligning with what I'm upset about, or what's bothering me? Sometimes it is, right? And other times I could be like, no, I can calm down a little bit, right? So sometimes that self-talk can help reduce the pressure, right? Or the intensity that we may be feeling. All right, so if you have anything else to share, please feel free to do so in the chat. Also, thank you for Janice a little while ago. Self-care reminder, right? We're talking about some things that potentially could be a little triggering. So thinking about, what did you identify as action plans if you were to get triggered, right? Drinking some water, taking a walk, talking to a friend. Irene said, my husband and I do a check-in. Okay. And I do a check-in during busy. I'm at 30. Oh, okay. Thank you. My husband and I do a check-in during busy days. I'm at 30% energy, but by the end of the day, I need support or help with dinner prep or cleaning. Right. So I think what you just said was a great idea. So sometimes maybe we're having early warning signs. It's too much. We're overwhelmed. Maybe our action plan isn't always like, I need someone to talk with me, or I need to talk to my doctor, or I need to go to support group, or I need to walk. Sometimes part of our action plan is, hey, can someone else help me with these responsibilities in the day, right? Cooking dinner, cleaning up, things to help kind of support the household and take a little bit of the pressure or, activity that we might feel responsible for, right? So just reaching out for support around general things. And just kind of taking that load off can be huge. So in this next section, this is kind of like before a crisis. So maybe we got triggered, maybe we didn't, but we were experiencing some early warning signs, right? And we tried to take action, and maybe that action helped, and we were able to kind of like relieve some of that intensity that we were feeling. Or maybe our symptoms have progressed to the point where they're very uncomfortable, serious, or even dangerous, right? And so we want to think about what are those symptoms or signs that indicate that something is breaking down or getting much worse. And if you want to share, that's cool. If you're like, that's really private, I don't want to, that is fine as well. For some people, things that indicate things are breaking down or getting much worse, we could be getting much more intense here. I also want to recognize that for some people, some of the things that people mention as early warning signs might actually be for someone else when things are breaking down, right? Or there may be things that people say, hey, this is what I look like when things are breaking down. And for someone else, they say, that's only one of my early warning signs. I'm still okay if that's going on for me. And so these symptoms could vary for different people. Like some people will have said things to me like, I just feel like I'm spinning, like I'm having these negative thoughts. I can't get them out of my head. I can't sleep. I'm having a lot of like weight gain or weight loss. Like it's getting too intense for me and I need to reach out for help. And this is often where we tell people like you have one foot in the street and one foot on the sidewalk. And this is your like chance to take action, right? To try to address something so that we are not getting to the point where we're in a crisis. So this is right before a crisis. And, for some people, this might be, I've relapsed. I'm starting to use again, right? Things are breaking down because I'm using again. And maybe I've been clean for a certain period of time. Maybe I, am having thoughts of suicide or taking my own life. That can happen for some people when things are breaking down. Maybe I've totally like isolated from the people around me, from my family or my supporters. And, I'm not feeling in a good place. Like that could be a sign or symptom that indicates for a person that things are breaking down, right? And again, this is gonna look different for different people. Also, depending on if you have, a history of having mental health challenges, you might be able to be like, oh, symptoms. I know for my sibling, she has a psychosis disorder. So for her, when things are breaking down, it's a little more intense. So she may be, hearing voices. She might be thinking thoughts that aren't real. She may start to experience some paranoia that somebody's watching her or following her. And so for her, because of her specific diagnosis, when things are breaking down, they look a little more serious, right? But for myself, if I think of when things are breaking down, I just am like, maybe I'm crying. I want to like get away from everybody. I feel completely overwhelmed. I'm not sleeping well. And so, like I said, when things are breaking down can look very different for different people. And so don't feel that, oh, well, my symptom it doesn't feel serious enough to be on this list. Or maybe you may be thinking, my symptom is really serious, but maybe I'm not in a crisis yet, right? So this can vary. And so when you, and really, I really want to encourage you to think about different circumstances in your life. So, after I had a baby, when things were breaking down, looked different than they look for me now that I have a toddler, right? And so, or, when people are going through certain changes in their life, when things are breaking down, it can look different. So if someone's managing an eating disorder, when things are breaking down, might look different for them. And it might be more, geared towards food or intrusive thoughts or other things for them versus, somebody who may be dealing with something else or some other difficulty. And so it's, it could vary. And so with an action plan, if we're at the point of where things are breaking down, we're supporting somebody and maybe developing their plan for when things are breaking down. This action plan is to help reduce your symptoms when they've gotten this far. And with this action plan, we want to be very specific and direct. We don't want as many choices, right? And very, very clear instructions. So this list isn't really things that, oh, I think about doing. It's things that I must do, right? So when things are breaking down, for some people, what I must do is I need to make a doctor appointment. I need to go stay with somebody. I need to get out of my house. I need to take care of my kids right now. It may be, I need to go to a respite center, right? Maybe I need to get out of my house and into a therapeutic environment. And so when things are breaking down, it's gonna look very different for different people, but we want to make sure that plan is very specific, because maybe at that time we're managing a lot of thoughts, feelings, symptoms. We're maybe feeling a lot of intensity, a lot of pressure, and we might not have the capacity to be thinking through all of these options, what we should do, could do, might do. And so we want to be very specific and make it easy for ourselves, because when we're in that space, it's hard to then come up with a plan, right, of what we're going to do. So this is the whole point of creating this plan early, is so that if we get to this point, we already know what we're going to do. We have instructions, we have a list, we know what the next step needs to be. And if you're ever, if you have found yourself to ever be in a place where things are breaking down, if you have a supporter in your life, a family member, a partner, a friend, whoever that might be for you, consider sharing your plan with them. So that if you get to the point where things are breaking down and you reach out to a friend, you could say, hey, you know what? I have your plan. You shared it with me, and here are the things that you said that you need to do. And so maybe you have people that are reminding you to do those things, or maybe you have people that will support you in getting the things done that you need to do in order to prevent things from getting to a crisis. And so, you might not have gotten to this point in your life before. You may know other people who've gotten to the point where for them, things were breaking down. But, it's important to plan ahead. And often we think about that with physical health conditions. And we've seen people use RAP for physical health conditions. We've seen them use it for diabetes, for heart disease, for other things where they're identifying what are the early warning signs, how do they know when things are breaking down for them, for physical health conditions that they may be experiencing. And so this doesn't necessarily always have to be used for your mental health. You can use it for a lot of different things in your life. We've seen folks use this for their relationships, right? How do we know when our relationship is breaking down? Are we yelling at each other? Are we not communicating? Is someone not coming home? Are they, what are those signs? And then identifying what is that action plan? What are we going to do when those things happen? So I'm going to go ahead and skip this. But I just really want you all to think about that. Like, how do we plan ahead for health crisis, mental health crisis, relationship crisis, whatever that might be, right? Because we want to ensure that we are always in the driver's seat and we are planning ahead, right? For, if something were to occur. So with the crisis plan, this is not something that, this doesn't even always get developed within the group. This is something that folks go over because it can take people even up to a year to develop their crisis plan because there's a lot of details. So with the crisis plan, the point is that you've planned, you've identified what your actions, but you still might, you've identified what your action plans are, but you still might find yourself in a situation where someone else has to take over responsibility of your care. And we see this happen more with physical health crisis, where we see it called an advanced directive. For mental health, there's actually something called it's called PADS. I think it's a psychological advanced directive, and it's an advanced directive for mental health specifically. And so with the crisis plan, it's important to develop it when you're feeling well, right? When you're in a good place, because this plan might be used for when you're not in a good place, and you want to make sure you are very thoughtful in that development. So you really can't do it quickly. It does take time. Decisions like this take time. And you may often consider collaborating with a healthcare provider, your family members, or other supporters if you decide to develop this plan. And the idea of your crisis plan is that it's not being used by you. It's being used by your supporters, by your healthcare provider, just like an advanced directive would be. So it needs to be really clear and easy to understand, and it needs to be legible. And so that's why in the beginning I had suggested if you're supporting someone in developing a plan and maybe they're not, they don't write language. We might be using pictures and other ways to express themselves in the previous sections, but for this, someone else will be using the plan. So we want to make sure that it is written out. And so as a supporter, we can help people do that. So parts of your crisis plan are going to be similar, could be similar to the plan that we have created so far. We're going to identify what we look like when we're feeling well. We'll identify symptoms. We'll also identify who our supporters are, who our healthcare providers are, and medications. What treatments would we prefer to have? How are we planning for our care? What treatment facilities would we like to consider? What do we need from other people if we're in a crisis? And how will they know that we're getting better? How do they know it's time for them to give the keys back? And we want to create a simple safety plan that people can use when we are experiencing a crisis. So we're going to go through these different parts of the crisis plan. So earlier we talked about what is it like when we're feeling well? How do we feel? So you could copy that. We also want to make it clear that somebody can look at us or be around us, and through what they see and through our behavior, they can look at our what we're saying, what we say we look like we're feeling well, and look at us and be like, oh yeah, they're not looking like this right now. They're not in a good place, right? Just from what we wrote versus what they're seeing. I've also, we also encourage folks, to ask other people, when I'm doing good, what do you see? What do I look like to you? How am I behaving to you? So that they're able to also recognize the difference when they're looking at the plan you created. We want to identify symptoms. So we want to describe symptoms that would indicate to other people that they need to take over responsibility for our care and make decisions on our behalf, right? How will they know? How will they know that it's time to start this crisis plan? I know for my sibling, she may be starting to be very paranoid, stop taking medications, telling me about, voices that she may be hearing. So for me, I'm like, time to jump in. We need to make sure some things are handled. And, for other people, depending on what they're using the plan for, maybe they're using it for their, diabetes care, and they're passing out. They're having other things, symptoms that other people can see or notice, and they know that they need to take over. Another part of the crisis plan is identifying who are our supporters. Who do we want to take over for us if we start to have the symptoms that we identified? They could be our friends, they could be our family, they could be our healthcare provider. Who are those people? We're putting in our plan, these are the people that we want to have help us and take charge. We want to make sure that we talk to them before we put them in our plan, to make sure that they understand what we need from them, right? And that they've agreed to say, hey, you know what, if this goes down and you end up in a crisis, yes, I'm willing to do those things, right? So I have some people in my life that I'm like, you know what, I need you to keep my kid for me, because I know you're going to make sure they get to school, that they're going to be taken care of, you're going to feed them. I know you'll take care of them. Would you be willing to do that if I ended up in a crisis? I have my stepson where I'm like, hey, if I'm in a crisis, I need you to keep the dogs. You know them, you know their routine, you know how to take care of them. I need you to do that, right? I might have someone else who I trust with my finances, where I'm like, I need you to make sure my mortgage gets paid, that I don't end up with any in a financial crisis after my crisis is over. So you want to think about who your supporters are and what it is that you would like them to support you with. The next piece is, something I want to mention with supporters, you also want to identify who you don't want involved. Because sometimes the people you don't want involved are the first people to want to jump in and start taking over control. So I want to throw that out there as well. The fourth piece is identifying healthcare providers and medications. So who's your doctor? What pharmacy do you go to? Do you have other healthcare providers? Phone numbers, right? If you're starting to get unwell, if my sibling's starting to get unwell, I need to know who her doctor is so I can call them and say, hey, this is going on. You also want to list any medications you're currently taking, medications you prefer to take. So let's say you went in and you're like, I know they're going to start me on a medication. Which ones do you prefer? Which ones are acceptable to you, and which ones need to be avoided, right? Do you have allergies to any medications? Have you had medications where the side effects were so terrible, you're like, never give that to me again? You also want to identify treatments. So what types of treatments are you currently undergoing and why? Treatments you would prefer, treatments that are acceptable, right? And if necessary, any treatment that you would like to avoid and why, right? Maybe I had a really horrible experience in the past. Maybe I'm terrified of a certain treatment. Maybe within my religion, spirituality, that treatment is not acceptable, right? And so we want to be able to put that in our plan as well. The other pieces of our crisis plan is planning for our care. So if you were unable to care for yourself, where would you stay? So with my sibling, she typically, she may stay with me actually, which is very common. So she may stay with me for a little while to stabilize a little bit. I have another sibling who would stay with me simply for the, because of the environment that happens to be within my home. She feels like it's a place where she can have a peaceful place to be. And so you want to write down, where would you stay if you weren't able to care for yourself? Maybe you don't need to go to the hospital, but you can't be in your environment. And what would that ideal scenario look like? You would also want to identify treatment facilities. So if you had to go to a treatment facility, if you don't have a family or friend that can provide you with care, so maybe it's not always somewhere to stay, maybe you actually need certain care, maybe you need to be within a hospital, which hospitals or treatment facilities would you like to avoid, right? Which ones do you prefer, and which ones would you prefer not to go to? And then the last two pieces are, what do you need from other people? So we identified our supporters. What do we need from them, right? Who do we need to do what? What instructions might they need? And what do we want people not to do for us? Things that they think might be helpful, but might actually cause more issues or problems. And so when we're asking for support, we need to be really clear about what we expect, what do we want, and what don't we want. And then the last part of the crisis plan is recognizing recovery. How do our supporters know when we've recovered enough to take care of ourselves to where they don't need to use the plan anymore? Maybe it's small steps where we start taking on responsibilities. But how do they know when it's okay to give the keys back? And so we want that as part of our plan as well. So it's not always a negotiation after the fact. We've really thought about it, been thoughtful about it, talked through our plan with our supporters, and have given them really clear instructions on what to do, how to do it, and when it's our time to take control back. So to wrap us up, I just am curious to see if folks have any responses to any of these questions. How can a wellness plan help you to maintain recovery? Why is it important for you to create your own wellness plan? And why is it I guess those are just the first two questions. So how can a wellness plan help you maintain recovery, and why is it important for you or others to create your own wellness plan? Any thoughts? I'll take them. I know that I'll say for me, one of the reasons I created a plan, it wasn't more so from what I wanted from people. It was more for me to say who I did not want involved. That was a big deal for me, was to make sure that certain people were not involved in my care, especially in crisis, if I got there, because that was going to create additional issues for me. And, it's, again, this is different. These plans are different for everybody, but it really kind of helps you plan ahead. When we find ourselves in difficult situations, it can be hard to respond right then and there. But this can help us kind of pre-plan, create some options, and have something for us to reference, as we go along, and hopefully avoid getting to a place where things are worse. So today we talked about what a wellness plan is. We did some speed dating with creating a wellness plan, our wellness toolbox, our daily maintenance plan, triggers, early warning signs when things are breaking down, and a crisis plan. I really encourage you, those of you that are still with us, go check out your wellness toolbox, right? We just went through a bunch of stuff today. And so think about what are those things that you do to, help yourself feel better? Go do one of those things right now. Is it maybe lunchtime? Go take a walk, go drink some water, go talk to a friend, snuggle your dog, right? We had definitely a deep, intense discussion and presentation. And so it might be a good time to go tap into that wellness toolbox. Nikki shared, creating a plan will make it easier for me to go through the steps and quickly identify and respond to triggers and crisis. Absolutely. Tyler shared, a wellness plan can help by giving you a plan you can actually see to maintain recovery. And it's important so you can recognize what triggers you and what helps to keep you calm. Absolutely, you all. Thank you. I really appreciate everyone. You were all such a great group. Thank you for participating, being vulnerable, sharing about, what you might have experienced and what has helped you all get out of it. I think it was a great opportunity for mutual learning. If you do have any questions, feel free to check out our website, www.calvoices.org. You can also shoot us an email at info@calvoices.org.
Thank you, Stephanie and Cal Voices and our program sponsors for working with us to provide a space for our community to talk about mental health. I truly believe that conversations like these are so important to have. Today, we learned about the different parts of the wellness toolbox in the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. With this information, I hope you all can create a plan to mitigate the crisis that you've come across throughout your life. Speaking from experience, I can say that this plan can be revisited and updated as we change our triggers and find other sources of happiness to get through our crisis. Today, this was an excellent refresher course, Stephanie, and I thank you for that. Again, thank you all for attending today's webinar on mental wellness. I hope you all learned something new and found this information to be helpful in your journey to cope and improve your mental health. A copy of this recorded webinar will be made available on our website under the AAPI Strong tab. I will put a link in the chat for you all to access. Let's see here. Also, while you're on the website, don't forget to join our mailing list if you'd like to be updated on our programs or be invited to join our useful and relatable webinars and web events. In fact, we do have a couple of webinars coming up this summer, including an active shooter preparedness training and a webinar on AAPI resilience, telling your story, where we will visit our history and experiences and examine what makes us who we are and what keeps us going. Thank you all again and have a great rest of the day.
Stay